Welcome to Relationships as Spiritual Practice, Bridging the Secular and Spiritual, with your host, Alia Lochardet, founder of Mindful Compassionate Dialogue and Wise Heart PDX.
Hello, thank you for joining me today. So happy you're here and we're together in this way. Today the theme is dismantling without opposing or going against. I wanted to bring this theme particularly because of all the positive change I see people around me attempting to support. And I'm hoping we are wanting to pursue ever more subtlety as we try to create a better world together. And for me, the energy with which we do something, you could say energy, or you could say attitude, intention, really decides whether that something is life-serving or not. So both today in this podcast and in the next one, I want to really pull apart some things that can help us notice and discern what is the energy and the intention with which we are attempting to create a better world together. Okay. So I want to start just with some empathy for, why opposition comes up. And then I'll go into 3 main points about opposition and 3 corollary points about dismantling. So first, just want to identify empathy for the pain and grief that we feel on this planet. If we know about, which we probably do, all the things that are happening in the human sphere, in the animal sphere, in the ecosystems, that is suffering, that we see as suffering. We just witness over and over again so many actions and words that don't care for life in the way our hearts know is possible, both at the familial level and the communal level, and also at the global level. And so it really makes sense, considering that pain and grief, that we would attempt to respond or react with opposition, with moving against that which we see as something triggering or causing suffering. So today I want to invite us in to making a distinction between opposing and dismantling. So for opposing or opposition, I'm going to offer a very specific definition here, right? In my mind, opposing has as its organizing vortex this focus on what we don't want, what we're moving against. So it has a sort of pushing energy. And the intention and the attitude is permeated with against. So, for example, we might name what we're going against. Let's just name, for an example, capitalism. So we say, Ooh, capitalism, that's a thing that exists, and I want to go against it. And so after naming the thing you want to go against, then what usually follows from that going against energy is some sort of generalizing, general edicts for action, for example. Things like, we've got to get rid of billionaires, or we've got to take down these corporations, or no more GMOs, whatever it is, right? And then usually following such edicts, general edicts, there's anger and othering and blame rather than taking responsibility, self-responsibility. And then there's thoughts of stopping. Oh, let me go back. So the anger, the othering, the blame, things like we use words like they in general don't have any ethics, those people. They just want to take. We make big judgments, right? If they would share their resources, we wouldn't have this homeless crisis. So again, following through with the capitalism example. And then there's thoughts of destruction or stopping without much nuance as to the plan. So things like, well, we just need to get rid of so-and-so leader, or we just have to stop XYZ action. So also, usually with any form of reactivity, there's this form of generalizing this or that kind of thinking and oversimplifying the complexity of the suffering that we're witnessing or a particular system. And then the last thing I want to examine is the energy for change with that kind of organizing of experience, thoughts, beliefs. In my mind, it's not sustainable. It's a small and tight energy. And often requires anger, and anger is not a sustainable state. It's exhausting to be angry. It's a lot of hyperarousal. You have to continue to repeat angry stories in your mind or out loud to maintain it. It's not stable. It's not sustainable. So this is how I'm defining. One more thing there. So anger is exhausting, and othering is lonely, and blame leads to helplessness. So those are three ways in which opposing as a strategy for change is not sustainable. Okay. So I want to offer a different concept, framework that I'm going to call dismantling. So rather than opposing a particular system, let's say capitalism, we could say we want to dismantle a system that's not life-serving. So when we dismantle something, like, and here in Portland, Oregon, there's a reuse center for building materials. And so when a building is dismantled, the parts that can be used again are salvaged and used in a new building, and something new can arise. So the same with any sort of system of thought or other kinds of systems. We take it apart, and it doesn't mean everything in that system was non-functional. We look at what little pieces might be functional if they were organized in a different way, if they had a different intention behind them. And then we make something new. So dismantling then, as I'm offering it here, is asking for a certain amount of equanimity to see things as they are without pushing or pulling at them. So when you're looking at a system that's causing or triggering suffering, and you're able to maintain that equanimity, then you're able to see into that system with a different level of clarity, with a much greater level of clarity, right? When reactivity isn't present. And so from equanimity, you see how something functions with nuance. So you might still do the first part the same. I want to name a system, capitalism, let's say. And then I want to study that system. How exactly does it work? Right? I've mentioned Charles Eisenstein before and his book, Sacred Economics, in which he really looks at the system of capitalism and money with a lot of nuance. So much nuance, I have trouble really understanding all of it. But there's basic things he names there that I'll try and name here to the best of my ability, just as an example. We can see that in capitalism, the economy is set up in a particular way that for it to function, it requires infinitely more things to buy and sell. And we can see, examining this, that this then gives birth to the behaviors of exploitation and pushing to produce more, to invent needs, right? Not real universal needs, but to convince people they need certain things. And it also gives birth to mass production, creating things that we throw away, creating dumps, creating trash, creating depersonalization, separation from the sacredness of our material things, and on and on and on. When we see with nuance, then we can do the next step. Instead of anger, blame, othering, then you can say, and how do I participate in that? And you can see yourself in maybe, for example, in the capitalist system, you can see where you have this conditioned impulse to work and work. Or perhaps you can see where you measure yourself against standards that capitalism would have you measure yourself, particularly standards of success regarding material things or acquired money. The whole idea of acquiring and saving money is a capitalist idea, right? You see yourself trying to save more money, for example. Maybe you see yourself getting caught in scarcity, which is something capitalism promotes, right? And so you have an opportunity then with that nuanced examination of the system to also do a nuanced examination of your own life, your own decisions, your own consciousness, functioning, and hopefully access some agency there. And then, as we said, with opposition, there's these throwing out of blanket ideas like getting rid of this person or that. And with dismantling, we understand that to dismantle means to recognize the needs that that system was attempting to meet, or maybe meeting for just a few people, etc. And we ask the question, and so as we dismantle this, how will we tend to those needs within the particular given context going forward. And so there's a seeking and an inspiration towards a new way forward. So if we continue to take the example of capitalism, so for example, you might give yourself the task of, when I'm tired, I'm going to take a nap. And that's one way I'm going to dismantle capitalism within me. Or you say, I'm not going to make money off of more money. I'm not going to participate in investments as a form of security. I'm going to invest in my community relationships as a way of dismantling capitalism. There might be a lot of different choices there. The point is that dismantling includes experimenting with a new way to care for the underlying needs in a given context. And so I'm proposing here that dismantling is a sustainable strategy for change, unlike opposing or opposition. It is connecting, dynamic, and expansive. It requires you to see the components of how a system functions, to learn, to gain clarity, and cultivate wisdom and compassion. It asks you to be willing to examine how you have colluded with that which causes suffering, which requires your confidence, your courage, and plenty of support from your friends on the path. And lastly, dismantling asks you to find a new way forward in creativity, collaboration, and care. I hope this has been helpful for you in being able to contemplate your deepest intention as you attempt to create a better world together with your spiritual friends and also within your own heart and the peace that you cultivate there. In the next podcast, I'd like to continue with this same theme and talk more about differentiation and joining. So I hope that you will come back. Thank you for being here. Radiating love from my heart to yours.
You can learn more about Mindful Compassionate Dialogue and find free resources, live offerings, and self-paced workshops online at www.wiseheartpdx.org.